I am very happy today to meet and reach out to Nick Finzer, talk about his new album, which is coming out on April 14th, Dreams, Visions, and Illusions. And this is Nick's, I think it's your sixth album as band leader. Is that correct?
Yeah, sixth album with this band, the sextet.
Great. And I understand too that you'll be starting some gigs, I think in New York, April 1st. And then you have a bunch of gigs coming up after that, right?
Yeah, we're starting in Nashville on April 1st,
Okay.
hitting Nashville and then going to New York straight away after that and playing at Birdland on April the 3rd. And then some gigs in Texas near to where I teach, and then out to the West Coast to do some gigs in Arizona, California. So it's a busy month of April. I'm really looking forward to it.
Great. So are you currently in New York or are you in Texas?
Well, I teach at the University of North Texas now, and so I've been mostly kind of the pandemic kind of,
Right.
forced things to change. And so I'm living in Denton, Texas, which is where the University of North Texas is. Big
Oh,
jazz.
okay. So your last album, correct me if I'm wrong, was Out of Focus, but that was an album of covers, right?
Yeah, that record was a pandemic project, as many people had. That was something to keep me busy. But yeah, it was all covers, and it was just like fun tunes that I like playing, and a lot of like overdubbed trombone stuff, and collaborating remotely with some people that I hadn't gotten the chance to do so in a long time. And but yeah, back then this record coming up, Dreams, Visions, Illusions. This one was the result of a Chamber Music America New Jazz Works grant I was thankful to receive during that
Mhm.
time, and had some time to work on a piece. And so this Dreams, Visions, Illusions is a 9-part piece that has, it's kind of 3 parts of 3. So um, dreams, visions, and illusions. So yeah, it's all original music this time. And yeah, I tend to kind of go hard one way or the other on that.
So your last album of original music was Cast of Characters, which I think was 2019. What was your plan after that? I guess that was pre-pandemic, or was it? I don't even remember now.
It came out on February 29th because I remember picking like the leap day of in 2020. And so we were on the road doing the tour, halfway through the tour, maybe not even halfway through the tour, and we had to go home. It's like I don't know what's going on. I don't want to get stuck anywhere.
Right.
And so we came home. But yeah, that was the last album of original music, February of 2020. And yeah, man, it's been an interesting journey between then and now. But yeah, that album Cast of Characters was kind of the impetus for being able to get that grant and have my band be consistent and be able
Mhm.
to get those guys to come and play with me some more. And it was a great chance to be able to revisit, not only that material and that concept, but kind of develop it more. I've had that same sextet since the first record, which came out in 2013. So it's been about 10 years now of kind of dealing with these musicians and um, this setting,
Right.
for
Mhm.
trombone and bass clarinet, saxophone, guitar, piano, bass, drums, and kind of writing around these guys that I've grown to know and love.
So when did you start the writing process for the new album, Dreams, Visions, and Illusions?
Oh, when did I start? I started in 2021 in the fall.
Okay.
It's with these, grant things, like there's certain order of operations that happen, and so you get the grant, but then you write the piece, and then you get some of the funding to be able to go and do the premiere of the piece. We premiered the piece last summer in New York and Boston. We played at Dizzy's at Jazz Lincoln Center in New York, and then right after that, we went into the studio to get that recorded, and then now it's finally coming out. So kind of got the grant in 2020, wrote in 2021,
Mhm.
premiered 2022, and here it comes, 2023. So it's been a while.
So you mentioned the band, and that includes Lucas Pina on tenor and bass clarinet, Alice Wentz on guitar, Dave Barron bass, and Jimmy McBride on drums with Glenn Zalinsky on piano. You've been with this group for a long time. I think when I saw you here in Georgia, which was probably 2018, 2017,
Mhm.
Alex Wentz was with you.
Yeah.
Uh, when did you start playing with these guys?
Oh, well, we started playing together in 2011-ish, 2010, 2011.
Hmm.
A lot of us met uh, through, well, mostly through graduate school, where several of us were at the Juilliard School at that time. We met there, and I started playing. Lucas has a nonet, and I started playing in his nonet. And Lucas and Glenn had gone to the Brubeck Institute together out in California to study with Dave Brubeck, and that's how I met Glenn. But the rest of us, we kind of met through school, and just it just was a great cohesion, and
Hmm.
we understood. Lucas and I, for example, have a kind of a similar way of thinking about how we write music and orchestrate music. So like that was a easy fit, and I was playing in his band, and he plays in my band, and so there's having some similar people between our bands has been a nice continuity.
Hmm. And I believe Lucas is on your record company as well, your label. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Right,
We've released a
right,
few of his non-net records.
right.
Uh,
Fantastic. So you talked about the three different pieces or three different phases of the record.
mhm.
Um, and you talked about when you started the process. In terms of the writing, you did all the writing yourself, and I assume that the band helped with the arranging piece.
Not so much. I mean, it kind of was pretty fully realized knowing how they play at this point.
Okay.
It's kind of like can write. I mean, obviously they had great input. We definitely made changes. It wasn't exactly how it was, but I don't know. Sometimes the further down the road you get with writing music, the more specific you end up kind of writing things because they come more fully formed to your consciousness, I think.
Hmm.
The longer you do it, you're kind of like, oh, it's kind of supposed to sound like this. Not that I'm not open to feedback because these guys definitely brought it to life. It wasn't just my notes that made it work. But yeah, so we brought it in and workshopped it a little bit, and then, but pretty much it was ready to go because they kind of when you write for people for 10 years, you kind of get to know what they like to do,
Sure.
what they like to not do. Don't write a certain tempo or groove that they don't want to play, that sort of thing.
Hmm. So, where did you record it?
We recorded in New York, in Brooklyn. There's a great studio we've made a bunch of records at called the Bunker Studio in Williamsburg. And yeah, it's a go-to for New York projects.
Hmm. And how long did it take you to get through the recording process? Did you give them? Well, I assume you had charts, obviously, but did you give them demos before they came in, or did you just workshop the process, the album?
Yeah, we just workshopped it. We played uh, as part of this whole grant process. There was a time where we could get together and workshop the music once before any of that other stuff started happening. So we got
Mhm.
together for 2 days of rehearsal, just like before the piece was even done, to kind of workshop stuff. So by the time
Mhm.
we were done doing the premieres, we had workshopped it once already, and then we did like one rehearsal, and then we did the gig at Dizzy's, and then the next day we went into the studio. I've always done all my records in one day, so we just did it in one day. Um, Long day for sure, but we're just in a day, and then the next day we played in Boston. So we kind of did it back to back to back um, to kind of just. It feels better usually to do the same piece a couple times. By that third, fourth, fifth time you play through it, it's got a kind of a life of its own. So
Mhm.
when we did that premiere actually in the next day after we recorded it up in Boston. We actually recorded that too. So after the record comes out, sometime in the summer, I'm going to release like the live version
Oh,
of the
fantastic.
band too. So it's gonna so to, for us people that are super interested in like how something might evolve over time, you can hear like, oh, here's the live approach as well. So that'll be fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's just great to have an opportunity to try those new songs out and then go in the studio when they're fresh in your mind and get those down, and then a live recording of that, and that will be great. Thank you for that. Yeah, let me know when that comes out. So we talked a little bit about the band. How has the recording process changed from this album since you did Cast of Characters in 2019, or has it changed?
That's an interesting question. I think I have personally, I know, become um, able to be more detached from
Mm.
my own playing or my own music, um, and being more accepting of whatever's happening in the moment, and um, uh, trying to grow from 2019 to 2023, just being like, you know what, this is what it is. Like, this is how I'm playing. This is the situation. This is the amount of time we have to rehearse or record. And that's what it is. And kind of being okay with that. And that's like the kind of the spirit of the creative process and the spirit of documenting something over time. And, I feel like really good about kind of the arc of what's happened with this group in terms of development and like the writing and everything. And so I just had kind of come to peace with, like, there's a lot of things I wish maybe would have happened. Like, maybe we could have toured more or played more or something, but everybody has the same feeling, and we wish we could have done more. And I just had like kind of come to peace with it. And I'm just like really happy just to like play the music with these musicians and like get it down. So for me, I had grown in that way. But I've always kind of been a person to kind of go fast with these projects. So
Mhm.
that like one day thing has always kind of always been the standard for me. But so I guess the recording process was similar. Um, but for me, I had grown to be more accepting of just like, yeah, it's great. Like, a couple of little warts here and there and all, I want to hear the humanity in the music too.
Sure. So you have a record company, you do promotion of jazz albums, you have a solo career which has gone on for a while, and you're an educator. Um, has the edge, and also I think and Alex Wentz and maybe Lucas Pino are also educators. So does that impact how you approach the music, how you compose, how you arrange?
It's a good question. I think the answer is yes. I mean, I don't think you can escape how your teaching affects your musicianship. That's for sure. I think that in the biggest way that it impacts you is that you have to figure out a way to explain the unexplainable all the time to students. And so you get better at explaining concepts that have no clear definition and have no clear like methodology. And I always struggled with some of my teachers coming up that like they would do something. I'm like, how do you do that? And they're like, oh, I don't know, you just do it. And I'd be like, no, tell me how to do it. And I think, then you get on the other side and you're like, oh yeah, there's no really way to explain this. You just kind of like imagine this thing, and then you kind of find a way for your body to create that sound or to navigate the situation. So I think in that way, like, it's helped me to be able to explain myself more clear. I don't know if more clearly is the way to put it, but to explain myself in more words at least. But yeah, I think it helps you define like what it is that you are as a musician, as an artist. Like, what are the things that are important to you? Because you can only focus on so many things. What are you going to do? What is your imprint? Like, what is the sound that you're creating? Like,
Mhm.
is it, I try to get my students to think about what they want to do when they're finished, and what kind of impact musically they want to make, and to just try to describe like what that process was or how it unfolds
Mhm.
is one that you're kind of like, okay, well, maybe I did this and maybe I did this. And the more times you try to explain it, the more you can try to help the students. So in that way, I think that's probably the biggest impact on how teaching has impacted my writing or arranging. It's just that trying to explain it to somebody else.
See, I'm slightly disappointed.
Oh, you are? Okay. Sorry.
It's because I always thought there was a secret code that musicians, especially educators, had where they can articulate to each other and they understood it. And since I'm not educated in music, I will never understand that.
Hmm. No,
I
man,
mean,
there's
I
no
know how
secret
it makes me
code.
feel. I know how your music makes me feel, but I don't know why. But I guess that's music.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's so many different ways to approach it and so many different ways that people assign like meaning, or and it all means something different
Right.
to everybody. And so like even when I try to explain something, it's like I try to explain it 4 or 5 ways because I'm like, I don't know which one of these ways is going to resonate with you. And I always say, for me, this sounds like this emotion, and like here's the sound, and like this sounds like to me, but to you, you got to decide what it sounds like to you. So I wish there was a secret code, man. It would make life
Yeah.
way easier.
Oh, that's probably part of the charm of part of the power of jazz too. It really is because it the music can paint different visions in different people's minds. And I think yours certainly does that. I do want to ask you about a few of the tracks on the album.
Sure.
So I'm going to start with the first track, To Dream a Bigger Dream.
Sure.
Was that the first track? I think it was the first track.
It is, yeah.
Well, tell me about the concept around the song.
So kind of the whole journey through the 3 phases is kind of reflects that kind of creative process or kind of growing up in a creative life.
Mhm.
You see people, you dream of like what you could do, right? So to dream a bigger dream is kind of opening yourself up to the possibilities of what could come from the heroes that you see, from the shows that you witness, you feel, you seek them out, these people, you ask the questions there
Mhm.
are no answers to, and you're just in that seeking kind of mode, and you're just trying to open yourself up to more and more and more, and kind of dream bigger, like, wow, could I do this? Could I move to New York? Could I play with these people?
Mhm.
When just starting out, at least for me, when I was starting out, I didn't think I could necessarily hang with like cats in New York. I don't know, like, let me try, so that's it's kind of the beginning of the whole thing, it's kind of that witnessing and absorbing, and that's kind of the energy that it's supposed to kind of embody.
Oh, okay. Um, I think right now my favorite song on the album is "Follow Your Heart," and it
Mm.
comes with an intro. Could you talk a little bit
Mhm.
about those two?
Yeah. Yeah, we have To Dream a Bigger Dream. It goes into aspirations and
Uh,
convictions, and then we
Right.
go and we get into this like follow your heart. It's kind of tongue in cheek a little bit, this one, because that's something that like people say, like, oh, you gotta follow your heart, like follow, do what you want to do, or like follow your passion and these kind of things,
Mhm.
and I just think it's not the whole story, like, and you kind of don't realize that until you start to going down the path of like being a creative person, and what does that mean? What are the decisions you're making along the way? So that's why I say it's kind of tongue in cheek, because like people kind of say that, but then it's like, is that actually getting you to where you're trying to get to? Which is kind of, the other parts of the piece. But um, so follow your heart starts with this intro that's kind of a little bit abstract and kind
Mhm.
of this kind of questioning, kind of like, wait, what's going on here exactly? Like you start to peek behind the curtain, so as it were, into the world of being a creative person and seeing that process, and like, oh, this is what this is for real. And um, kind of just realizing that things seem one way to you, and then you're it's like, oh, well, maybe they're not actually that way. So that's kind of like a tumultuous kind of journey. That's why that goes and from that kind of abstract introduction and then goes into the piece, which is more fast paced and kind of angular and kind of aggressive, because you're kind of like, wait, what's going on, and kind of
Right.
have that kind of anxious feeling, and that's why
I
it ends
think
up
that
like
was one of
suddenly.
Alex Wentz's more aggressive solos too on the album.
Yeah,
I
for sure.
absolutely love the song.
Oh, that's awesome.
The next song, let's see, we talked about Follow Your Heart, and I have um To the Top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that one is kind of that the middle portion of the piece is kind of the beginning of the self-actualization of kind of realizing what something is, and you could apply this to anything. It's not just music, it's just
Mhm.
kind of like, I mean, everyone was going through that kind of period of self-reflection during 2020, 21, etc. Not to beat that into the ground, but that was kind of like that self-reflective moment. So to the top on the chart, it has, I didn't put it in the actual liner notes or in the album artwork, but I put quotation marks on around top, right? So to the top, like this like made up thing in your mind about like what reaching the summit of this journey is, whatever goal, like you reach the goal. It was like you think it's the top, but you're like, wait a minute. You get there and you're like, wait a minute. That's kind of why it's got this kind of like swirling kind of quality to it, because you're like,
Mhm.
wait, what's going on here? Like I thought I had checked all the boxes, and then what happened? Like there's no one here. No one's around to like give me a thumbs up or anything, even though I hit this goal. So that's what that one is about.
Oh, it's fantastic, especially the piano intro and then you're in solo. They're
Mhm.
very moving. So next on my list is Vision or Mirage, which is the next
Yeah,
song actually.
that's the next. It is the next song. Yeah. So that one is. So now that you've had that experience, right? It's kind of this,
Denouement, the
the go. You just coming out right out of that last piece. You kind of look, and this piece is totally rubato. There's no like groove to it. It's all kind of everyone's following one another,
mhm,
and the vibe of it is, where it's coming from, at least emotionally from me, is kind of, you're like, wait, if this one thing that I just realized, this goal I achieved, is not actually what it seems like, what else out there is actually like a true vision? Like, can I reach this vision, or is it not real? Is it just something I made up in my head, or is it
mhm.
something that I can achieve? So it's kind of, that's like kind of self-doubt kind of creeping back into the picture from where you started from at the beginning. And
Right.
it's like, and so that's kind of just like looking out and being like, wait, which things are also not real? Whether it's and so it's kind of like, it also relates to this creative process and of the muse. Like you get inspired to do something and you get down and then you're like, wait, how do I finish this piece? Or like, how do I finish this album? Like you get 70% of the way through or 80%, and then you get all these like swirling thoughts. So that swirling is kind of the idea of that piece. And I that's probably, for me, I like that piece the best. It's also the simplest, but
Really? Okay. So do you, when you compose, do you already have in mind what instruments will go for the solo sections? For example, Vision of Mirage has the tenor and the trombone solos. I think To Dream a Bigger Dream has a bass clarinet and starting off with your trombone solos at the beginning. Do you already have in mind? I think that was the song that had a bass clarinet. I didn't write it down.
I think waking up has bass clarinet. To
Okay.
dream a dream, to dream a bigger dream definitely has tenor. There's a tenor and trombone solo.
Okay.
But I would say sometimes I have an idea of what it's going to be, and sometimes I don't. I would say this is where the band and the playing and the workshopping is the most evident. I was in the improvised portions, like who fits there, who can make this piece feel authentic to that emotion. So sometimes, like on there's a tune called "Waking Up," and that
Mhm.
one I was like, definitely bass clarinet. There's got to be bass clarinet here, or
Okay.
um, or there's definitely going to be a drum solo moment in this piece or something like that. And, you're trying to feature different musicians. Like the second track on their Aspirations, that one I knew right from the beginning. I was like, this is going to be a bass feature. We're only going to have a bass solo on this track, and we're going to feature Dave a little bit. And I try to have a moment, because it's easy to like not feature the bass on a recording, because sometimes they're like, oh well, people won't play it on the radio or whatever. I'm like, no, he's still contributing an important role, and he needs a chance to shine. So I do kind of make a mix, of like who's going to be the best to fit the vibe, and then also feature everybody.
Sure, and it changes the dynamic of the album a little bit too. Gives a little
Mm-hmm.
bit more there. So the final track, Now, Then, and When, and you have some more of Alex's lead guitar there. That's a
Yep,
shorter piece as well.
it is. Yeah, it's kind of the wrap up. It's kind of, I wanted to wrap up on a positive vibe, because it's like,
Right.
all this like circular self-talk, you kind of just have to just like chill out and kind of just like, okay, like it's gonna be fine, like, so that's what I mean. Like now, then, and when is just like, well, when am I gonna reach this thing that I thought I had achieved? Probably never. And that's cool. I'm just gonna enjoy the vibe, the ride. And
Right.
so I wanted to make sure to end the record on that more upbeat kind of vibe. So I thought it fit really well. That's another one. I was like, I don't know who's gonna blow. I thought I was gonna improvise, and I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna play. This should be Alex.
Mhm.
we'll just make it short because it's just a groove and we'll play it and then it'll be done instead of like stretching out for 8 minutes on the same groove. So it was, and that was also the band, to your point that they were like, this might work out like really nice if we make it like a small little statement instead of like forever vamp thing. So that was so that they knew what to do and I did not.
Well, I love the dynamics of the album, and of course the solos and your solos are all amazing. Um, you talked a little bit about how you did some live gigs in preparation for the recording date, and that
Mhm.
considering the release of the live album, are there songs which you left off?
In this case, no, because it was this grant piece and it was documenting the whole piece. And there are things that never made it into the piece, I would say. There
Yeah.
are other elements, but they were kind of chopped off before the premiere in summer of 22. So yeah, there were some other little fragments and I always have fragments. Do I have it here? Somewhere in maybe over there, like a little notebook I have of all like musical ideas. And so when I'm writing a piece like this, where it's like kind of an expanded, related pieces in a larger work or whatever, I try to like brainstorm and like use similar material to as the genesis for multiple pieces and or multiple tunes. And so I have like all these sheets with all these different ideas. So whenever I get stuck, I do definitely go back to those. So they could resurface at some point, but I don't know what point that will be.
Fantastic. So your tour again starts April 1st. The album comes out, I believe, it's April 6th, 14th.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're excited about that. Is there anything else you want to share with us?
No, this has been amazing. Thanks for taking so much diligent interest in the record. I really, really appreciate it. And I just hope people will enjoy the music as much as I enjoyed making it. I know sometimes a record full of only original music can be a little like at arm's length sometimes. So I appreciate, the listeners giving it a chance and, checking out and seeing how they can relate maybe their own life journey into some of these ideas that we talked about in the piece.
Yeah, that's interesting because I love hearing original music, especially original jazz, and your original albums are fantastic anyway. So I hope to catch you sometime on this tour. I don't see you coming to Georgia, but you're going to be in Nashville, which isn't too far away. So hopefully I can make one of those gigs there.
We'll
But
try to make it down to Georgia one of these days.
yeah, absolutely. But looking forward to the album release, and I will check in with you about the live album. So
Great.
that's it. Take
All right.
care.